This is a very well-behaved group. Thanks, Sarah. All right, we'll call to order this regular City Commission meeting of Monday, June 17th. Everyone, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. And as always, we begin our meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the territory of the Ottawa and Chippewa peoples who have stewarded this land through the generations. Thank you for your strength and resilience in protecting this land and inspiring us to uphold our responsibilities to do the same. And at this time, then, I will hand it over to the city clerk for roll call.
Yes, and good evening. Commissioner Anderson.
Present.
Commissioner Shaw.
Here.
Commissioner Stanley.
Here.
Commissioner Treadwell.
Here.
Commissioner Werner.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson.
Here.
And Mayor Shamrow.
Here. Okay, we'll move on to any announcements from the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor Shamrow. I just wanted to take an opportunity to thank the city staff for how quickly they were able to help out with the cyber incident last week into this week. Our IT team has deployed mobile hotspots. Our computers have been scrubbed, so to speak, and they've been given additional software. And at least as of today, we're back up and running in terms of having internet and email. So just special thanks to Christine Bosley and Jerry in our IT department who've been really on top of this with the other staff.
Great. And very much appreciated. Everybody, I think, compliments to the county as well. Everybody handled it very well. And then announcements from the city clerk, please.
Yes, some meetings to announce for this week, the week of June 17th. The City Planning Commission, City Commission, and Downtown Development Authority are having a joint session on Tuesday, June 18th. That'll be at 6 p.m. at the City Opera House. And that's a housing policy workshop, which will be interactive. Doors will open at the Opera House at 5:30 p.m. And we encourage everyone to attend that session. And then the Arts Commission is meeting on Wednesday, June 19th at 3:30 p.m. in the committee room on the second floor of the Governmental Center. And the Riparian Buffer Committee is also meeting on Wednesday, June 19th. That's at 4 p.m. And it will be conducted as a walking tour, leaving the Governmental Center shortly after 4 p.m. And then the Brown Bridge Advisory Committee is meeting on Thursday, June 20th at 5 p.m. at Buck's Landing, which is at the Brown Bridge Quiet Area. And the Downtown Development Authority Board is meeting on Friday, June 21st at 9 a.m. in the Commission Chambers. Just a couple of miscellaneous announcements due to, of course, the recent cyber incident that was briefly mentioned by the city manager, which has resulted in a network disruption. The city has a webpage that outlines service impacts and general public contact information. You can go to traversitymi.gov for more information. And the last thing I really have is just the usual reminder for everyone up here to please speak into your microphone so everyone can hear you. And that's all that I've got.
Great. Well, we'll start out with a couple of quick, great, though, presentations. We're very excited. The first one of which will be to the Community Foundation. I believe Mr. Mengenbier is here, and I'll let you kind of tee that up. Liz?
Thank you, Mayor Shamrow. I'm pleased to welcome and introduce Dave Mengenbier, who is the president and CEO of the Grand Traverse Regional Community Foundation and who assisted the city in remarkable speed to help us get bathroom sinks and 2 solar benches installed on 11th Street outside of the Pines. And I'll leave it to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz, and thanks for the opportunity to offer a few remarks. So I am here on behalf of a number of philanthropies and donors that helped raise the $51,000 to contribute to the City of Traverse City for temporary bathrooms, the hand washing stations, and the charging benches at the Pines. Contributors included the Community Foundation and our donors, Rotary Charities, the Olson Family Foundation, and the Huckle Family Foundation. So I just first want to publicly recognize and thank these donors and philanthropies for stepping up to help alleviate at least some of the deplorable conditions our unhoused neighbors experience every day. We recognize that these facilities are stopgap measures and that our community must provide a year-round shelter, permanent affordable housing, and supportive services. And in that vein, the Community Foundation and Rotary Charities has been convening a group of key stakeholders in an effort to reach a consensus around a set of goals and outcomes. Thus far, the stakeholders group has met 3 times and includes leaders from law enforcement, the city, Grand Traverse County, neighborhood associations, the library, service organizations, the Housing Commission, Safe Harbor, and the Coalition to End Homelessness. Initial discussions have focused on reaching a shared understanding of the problem we're trying to solve, a desired end state, critical issues preventing us from getting to where we need to be, and importantly, the facts underlying this complex challenge. Going forward, I'm hopeful these discussions will bear fruit, but I also recognize there are many issues around homelessness, housing, supportive services, public safety, as well as risk factors such as substance use disorders and mental illness. And these are all challenging and complex and not easily resolved. I very much appreciate the city manager's willingness to represent the city's interests in these convenings, along with the chief of police, the community social worker, and a number of other city agencies. And I also just want to recognize Liz's proactive approach that led to area funders providing the resources needed to purchase these sanitary facilities and the charging benches at the Pines. So I just want to say our collaboration, I think, really fills an important gap that existed at the Pines and demonstrates, once again, the importance and value of private-public partnerships. So with that, I just wanted to say the funders were pleased to raise this money and contribute it to the city for these facilities. Looking forward to working with the city and other key stakeholders to address this ongoing homelessness problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, this year, on a not unrelated topic, we'll invite Jane Lippert and friends, some are already gathered, for the presentation of the Sarah Hardy Humanitarian Award. And I'll just speak very briefly. This is really kind of Jen Loop on behalf of the Human Rights Commission that awards the Sarah Hardy Humanitarian Award every year. We had a great celebration just before this with some very inspiring and kind words, a little bit of tears, I think, from a lot of us, and wanted to give us a chance to honor you during our commission meeting right here. So I'm going to hand this to you. We're kind of always do this in different order, but I want to also invite up Jen to kind of speak a little bit about the award, the selection process, and just reiterate what I said during our presentation before, that we live in an area with a lot of amazing people doing a lot of amazing work, and you truly deserve to rise to the top this year, and we really appreciate all your efforts. But we're very grateful to have you and part of this continuum of care that we talk about here, including just with our last agenda item. So thank you.
Happy to be in front of the commission again. Again, I'm the chair of the Human Rights Commission. The Sarah Hardy Award every year recognizes a local individual that exemplifies the principles of the Human Rights Commission. This year, our honoree is Jane Lippert. She most recently has been the outreach coordinator at Central United Methodist Church for many years, but she's worn many hats. And so the nomination process starts in the spring. We encourage everyone to nominate those people in the community that we know that are doing really good work. We have a form online. If you just look up Human Rights Commission, you'll get there. And we are so always inspired by all the people and then the people we get to pick for this award. Thank you.
It is especially wonderful to be receiving this after hearing from the Community Foundation and that wonderful news. I think one of the things that has struck me is what grace collaboration there is. I think those of us working with people experiencing homelessness learned a lot more about that during COVID, one of the gifts of COVID, and to see it going on at so many levels. It's been an honor to work with folks who are experiencing homelessness. as I said, it feels really strange to be recognized for something that you love doing and doesn't feel like a labor. But I get to work with a lot of amazing people and amazing places. The volunteers in the Traverse City area are absolutely out of this world and make so much happen. And community partners like Food Rescue and Safe Harbor and Jubilee House and Goodwill and so on, and just none of us can do everything, but if we can each offer some piece to try to help offer a way for folks to transition out of chronic homelessness or temporary homelessness, it makes all the difference. So I thank the environment of this city, and I give a big thanks to Central Church, who uses their space so well. You know, hats off to my bosses, and that opening your door. I've pastored in churches, and there's few of them that I think would open their building every day to have an unpredictable bunch of people come in and at their worst, and be able to shower and receive mail and services and get food and be a place of respect and honor. And I just really think that each of us, no matter what walk of life or where we've come from or where we've been or what we've done, each of us deserves respect and kindness and being listened to and boundaries. And we need all those things. And I'm just have felt very fortunate to be a small part of that. And thank you again for this recognition.
We've got a few camera people here waiting to take some pictures, I think. Everybody wants to come on out? Oh, there's your volunteers and your sea of people? Yeah, that's right, your groupies.
Boss taking photos.
There you go. And the second in command, taking photos.
And Ryan Hannon, who
Yes.
I'm retiring this week. Ryan Hannon, who will be taking over, a familiar face.
All right, well, thank you, Danny. Thank you for everything. All right, I think that took care of that group, but if anybody else wants to, we're on to our regular business now. So if you were just here for the celebrations, you can excuse yourselves, but please feel free to stay. Before we move into consent calendar, I have 2 agenda items I'd like to amend, one of which is to remove consent calendar item number 2. It's a duplication of consent calendar item number 7, but 7 in the packet had more information regarding the item, so we're just going to keep that one and get rid of 2. And then I would ask that, unless there's objection from the commission, that we move old business number 4 to the top of old business. It involves a Zoom presentation, so we can convert from consent calendar to old business and give them a second to set up the Zoom rather than doing it in the middle of the agenda. So do I need a motion?
No.
Okay, unless there's an objection. Seeing none, we will amend the agenda as such and now move over to the consent calendar. So I'll hand it back to you, Mr. Marantat.
Yes, the purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public can ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for individual consideration by the commission, and such requests will be automatically respected. If an item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted in parentheses on the agenda is approved by a single commission action adopting the consent calendar. Item 1, consideration of approving the minutes of the June 3rd and June 10, 2024 meetings of the City Commission. Approval recommended. Item 2 was removed. Item 3, consideration of authorizing a purchase order for an aerial bucket van for use by Traverse City Light and Power. Approval recommended. Item 4, consideration of authorizing the 3-year renewal contract for the provision of a school resource officer for Northwest Education Services. Approval recommended. Item 5, consideration of authorizing a lease for Chubby Unicorn to utilize city-owned property at 439 East Front Street adjacent to its business for outdoor dining purposes. Approval recommended. Item 6, consideration of authorizing a 5-year purchase order for ClearGov for budget cycle management. Approval recommended. And finally, item 7, consideration of authorizing an agreement for the water service pipe type verification project and consideration of waiving the competitive bidding process for professional contractor management services, which are necessary in order to meet the Michigan's lead and copper rule, with the full cost to be covered by a state of Michigan grant.
Okay, would any commissioner like any items removed?
Item
One.
7, please.
Item 7? Sorry, I couldn't hear.
7.
Okay, thanks. And anybody else? Any member of the public? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for a motion.
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
Support.
Thank you. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay, item number 7, and Commissioner Warner, do you want to begin?
Thank you. So 2 things. The first is really just for better public awareness, and that is, and it's covered here in the memo, but that's part of why I pulled it off the consent calendar, just to have it repeated for the public watching at home. It's the last paragraph on the first page as far as the random number of water service material type based on the et cetera, et cetera. So it's field verifying. So it's essentially, because people have questioned, like, wait, I thought we knew, like, where the lead service pipes are, and we do, but this is statewide, and so the state wants all the communities to, like, verify. So you do a random sampling, you dig up a whole bunch, and the statistics will tell you whether you, how much you found, essentially. So it's mandate from the state, it makes sense, so I'm fully supportive of that. My second question, or comment, I guess, gets to the use of Hubbell, Roth, and Clark and waiving the competitive bidding process. I feel like, not to pick on HRC, but more and more we're waiving the competitive bidding process, and it just makes it more difficult to not waive it in the future. Like, the more we waive it, the stronger that relationship, and then the more we reference that relationship to waive it the next time. And this, to me, at only $24,000, in my understanding, this is really just to keep the folks doing the work honest. It's to, like, look in the hole and say, yep, oh yep, we're at that address, and that looks like this material, check. So fairly low as far as technical, in my opinion, and a great opportunity to open it to the competitive bidding process, because then maybe we have 2 entities that we're dealing with going into the future, not just Hubbell, Roth, and Clark. Again, nothing against them, but for us and working for the public, generally we try to limit the number, how frequently we waive the competitive bidding process. So I'm not going to stand in the way, but just at some point, I'd like us to think about, oh, maybe we need to slow down our reliance on waiving the competitive bidding process. I don't know what that looks like, but this would be an opportunity to do that. Thanks.
Yep. Were you looking for information on the non-competitive bidding on this particular item too?
No, I mean, it's spelled out because
Yeah.
we have the relationship. It seems to make sense to do it. So I'm not going to argue with that necessarily, but if we can't have a competitive bidding process here,
Yeah.
we're kind of like, we're always going to have that relationship, and we're always say, oh, let's just go with them because we know them.
Sure, and I guess I would take that then as a question, change it into a question, whether it was HRC, I just got done with the HRC Sarah Hardy Award, so 2 different HRCs here tonight. You know, if any, I guess my question would be is, if this was a different firm doing this, would it also then be recommended that they do this portion of it? And, you know, does this have to do with like coordinating who's where and when? Or is it, you know, just kind of we're already in the process and dealing with and using them, and that's kind of how it goes? And Art, I see you've approached, so I'll let you kind of address Mr. Warner's point and maybe
Sure.
my question as well.
Yeah, Art Krieger, Director of Utilities. So in this particular case, we are moving through quite a few different projects to get to the final endpoint with the state. It's very important we have continuity between these projects. So we're working on a 3-year project for replacing galvanized services that used to be connected to lead. That affects this project in some ways, and this project affects that project in some ways. So we're working with Hubbell Roth Clark on the 300-plus services. That's a 3-year project. We started that, we're in year 2 right now. So it's more than just checking, babysitting, if you will, the contractor. There's a lot of pay items that are judgment calls in the field that we need a representative out there, and we can come out when needed. But we're involved with this project. But they're the eyes and the ears. HRC would be in the field and documenting everything as well. So there's a computer network program type thing that we are logging all this data in. They're already doing that with the first project when we're replacing all these. So they're very closely related, and I think it's in the best interest of the city to actually have Hubbell Roth Clark as a continuity piece between these projects.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions for Mr. Krieger or a motion?
The recommendation here, please request, I recommend the city commission award.
yeah.
I'm sorry,
construction.
can I read a motion
Yeah.
for you?
Yeah, I was
Thank
going to say,
you.
that is a weird one.
That the mayor and city clerk execute a contract with ML Chartier Excavating in the amount not to exceed $255,960.59 to meet Michigan's lead and copper rule, with funds available in the water fund and the earmark grant, with such a contract to be subject to approval as to substance by the city manager and it's formed by the city attorney, and that the competitive bidding process be waived, and that the mayor and city clerk execute a contract with Hubbell, Roth, and Clark for construction monitoring services in the amount of $24,240, with such agreement subject to approval as to its substance by the city manager and it's formed by the city attorney, with funds to come from the water fund and earmark grant. Sorry for the technical issue there.
All right, great job, Heather.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. I'll second that
All
motion.
right, thank you. All right, any further discussion up here? Seeing none, any public comment on this item?
Reaffirming that this is not to exceed.
Yes, not to exceed.
Okay, good point. All right, any public comment on this item?
Justin Reed, 630 Casualty Drive, Permit 1B, Traverse City, Michigan, city residents. Does this project include Silver Drive as far as the the connections off from Silver Drive into the Commons?
I don't know. Question we'll have to ask later.
So,
Mr. Krieger can assist you with that question.
all right,
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
So, just to confirm, you're asking if this project will verify any water service pipe types on Silver Drive? Yes, on Silver Drive. I don't believe it's a random selection, and I don't have the list memorized, but I don't recall if there are any on Silver Drive or not. So I could look that up later.
Thank you, Mr. Krieger. We kind of jumped the order there, so if, and no problem though. If anyone else has any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission then. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes. Okay, and now we will take the briefest of moments here and get ready for our our CDBG, Community Development Block Grant presentation, but we'll be loading on in Zoom really quickly here, so talk amongst yourselves.
Well, on the topic of lead, If your house is built before 1986, there's a chance that there's 50% lead solder on your pipes internally. And if it's built before 1950, there's a good chance that there's lead pipes in the house. So the city will do our part to clean everything up, but you still may want to check your water.
Good point.
Probably just be your voice. That's not for you.
Oh.
Hey, can you hear us?
Can you hear us? Oh. Halfway there.
Thought they were holding very still.
Can you hear us?
Oh, she can hear us, but now we can't hear you just yet.
Now, can you say something?
Oh, nope, hold on, still having trouble with the audio on our end.
Okay.
Is there a screen share that's going to be part of this?
Yeah, she's going to share her screen when we can get her. Hear us?
We still have trouble with the audio on this end.
So many times today.
It always works during the test. Oh.
So while Katie's doing that, do you want me to kind of give you a quick little overview?
Sure,
Get
I
us
absolutely think
started.
we can have you
Okay.
start with that.
I'm Leslie Sichterman, the Deputy Planning Director. I've been working with Amanda Warner and also Jason Smith from Wade Trim. They've been helping us through the process. As you all know, I think by now, we are a new grant recipient through HUD to receive CDBG funding. Part of the process to become eligible and to start collecting and using those funds is to prepare a 5-year plan, and then we'll do annual action plans under that. And we are in the midst right now of finalizing that, the draft of our 5-year plan. And then we'll have a 30-day comment period when people from the public, and, you know, we can continue to hear from you and others. We can continue to make changes and refinements to that plan. We'll have a public hearing on August 12th, and at that meeting as well, we'll attempt to approve that plan at the same meeting following the public hearing. So far, we've had, and also to let you know, our drop dead deadline is to have this sent up to the HUD system on August 16th. And we got a little bit lucky this year in that the federal budgeting was a little bit behind. I believe the fiscal year actually begins June 1st, so that bought us a little bit of time. As a new grant recipient, we had a certain amount of time to get on board, hire our consultant team, and get everything going. So it's been a little bit of playing catch-up here all along. But we're on a schedule right now to get this done. We've been working pretty closely with the field office in Detroit as well. I think maybe some of you heard me say in the past that even the folks at the field office, the HUD field office, this is all new to them. There hasn't been a new grant recipient in the state as far back as anyone can remember. And the reason we're a new grant recipient is because of the new metropolitan planning organization status that our region has. Traverse City being the seat of that region makes us eligible. So that's when that all kicked in. Our allocation is somewhere in the neighborhood of $365,000 a year. I think in your packet, there was included a list of eligible activities, which is kind of a hard to decipher matrix. But again, the team at Waitrim has been great. They're very experienced with the existing grantees in the state and outside of the state in working with them through this process. So they've gotten us up to speed and taught us a lot about the process. And as soon as we get Amanda on, she's going to explain to you just what the program is, some of the highlights, and what the some of our requirements are, and again, kind of our timeline.
Great. Give it a mic.
Hi, sorry, you're on my phone now.
Gonna go, it seems like we're gonna go a little old
Very
school
low
here.
tech, I'm sorry, but we can hold you up to a microphone.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Can we get the screen share
I
on the
don't-
screen so that we can see?
Yeah, I don't think it's.
I don't think that's going to work,
this isn't
unfortunately.
working, I'm sorry.
Is it a bandwidth issue?
Okay,
Can you tether
you
to a
can hear me
different
though
device?
through the phone, correct?
Yeah, we can hear you.
There's
Yeah,
something wrong with
okay.
the hotspot because we disconnected enough people, so it's not a bandwidth issue. I don't know what it is, but I think
Okay.
the best we can
Okay.
do is probably just have you talk, and we'll
Sure,
hear your
happy
words.
to. Happy to. In terms of the slides, will you be sharing the slides, or how should we do that?
Should be able to do that, right?
Oh, I
You
have
do
the
that up
slides.
at the-
Let me get
yeah.
them up there. Unconnect from here. Sorry, guys.
Going to get the slides up for you.
Oh,
I think we have one student in the audience. So before there was Zoom, this is how things used to be. You'd have somebody on the phone, and then they'd email you something, and you had to read it together, or they'd fax it to you.
Panic mode. But I still have to be able to connect, so she might just need to,
Do you want me to disconnect? Do you want us all to disconnect during the presentation?
if you all could
I
disconnect.
took everybody off except for you, and
Oh,
that
okay.
should be it. I think just go with the voice, truly.
Well, and she's,
I think, why don't you go ahead and proceed? We're not going to be able to show the slides
Okay.
on our screens, but we'll do our best to hear what you've got to say.
Okay.
Great, thanks.
All right, very well then. All right, very well then. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time this evening. My name is Amanda Warner. I'm a planner with Wade Trim. We've been working with the city to prepare the 5-year consolidated plan for CDBG funding. So tonight we wanted to present that program to you in terms of the funding source, providing you a background of that funding source, and then discuss the priority needs that were identified during the consultation process. So the 5-year consolidated plan is a 5-year planning document that governs the use of federal housing and community development funds. The funding that the city is receiving is for what is called a program year 2024. That program year extends from basically October 1st, 2024 through 2025 is the first program year of funding. However, the 5-year consolidated plan extends all the way through 2028. So we're really talking about the period starting in 2024 and extending through 2028. So a consolidated plan is a document that's required by HUD, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and that consolidated plan is essentially an application for federal grant funding from HUD. It documents the public input received during the planning process and also the community needs identified. And it also includes a strategic plan, and that strategic plan is a plan for carrying out goals, 5-year goals. And it also includes an action plan, which includes actual projects that'll be conducted during the program year, so a 1-year period. So the funds that are covered by the consolidated plan are the Community Development Block Grant, otherwise known as CDBG. Now, the CDBG program has been around since approximately 1970. It's coming up, I think this year is the 50th anniversary of that federal grant program. And the Community Development Block Grant is really, if you consider the name of the grant, it's based on community development projects targeted towards specific block groups. So the block grant name comes from what most people know as U.S. Census blocks. So the block grant program. So the CDBG program addresses several different types of community needs and community development type projects, and that includes housing, homelessness, special needs, and community development. And I'll explain a little bit more about that in a moment. So CDBG funds can be used for mostly community development activities. So we're talking about things like housing. This would include housing rehabilitation, public infrastructure and facilities improvements, and public services. So Traverse City, the first year allocation of this grant program is $365,000 approximately. So it's $365,323. So that's the amount of funding for the first program year, which would be fiscal year 2024. Now, those funds are actually subject to a couple different caps. One is that only 15% of those funds can be spent on public services, and only 20% of those funds can be spent on administration. So there's a couple caps to consider when you're talking about that $365,000. So these funds are specifically designated to assist low to moderate income individuals and families. So low and moderate income individuals and families are essentially persons that are making 80% or less of area median income. So in Traverse City, area median income is about $99,000. So 80% of that is about $79,000. So we're talking about a family of 4 earning less than $79,000 would fall into this category. Now, HUD has different benchmarks for what those different thresholds are depending on the size of the family. So for example, a 1-person family versus a 5-person family, what that funding threshold is. But just talking generally about your average family of 4, it'd be about $79,000 or less in terms of income. Now, that funding also can be used to prevent or eliminate slums or blight. And it also can be used to meet community development needs having a particular urgency. Typically, that definition needs having a particular urgency, most typically associated with a natural disaster or some kind of event. If you recall, COVID was one of those types of emergencies. So during the development of the five-year consolidated plan, there were several opportunities to participate. So a survey was published. A survey was published both in paper and online. That survey is actually still open, and it'll remain open through June 19th. So if you go on the website there, that survey is still open and available. Additionally, there was a needs assessment meeting that was held on May 22nd. And then tonight we're having this presentation with you to get your input as well. There'll be a 30-day comment period coming up in July, and the draft document will be available for public comment at that time also. So just to give you a sense of the input that we've received so far, the survey's collected about 165 responses, and the needs assessment, we got a lot of input out of that. I believe a summary of that was included in your packet tonight for your review as well. So the priority needs that came out of the needs assessment focus group meeting and then also the survey were really limited to the following. So one was to support shelters and services for those experiencing homelessness. So that was a primary need that came up, and that occurred both in the survey and at the focus groups. To assist with the construction or rehabilitation of housing for low-mod households, seniors, and for those experiencing homelessness. Another priority need was to lower the economic barriers to housing for qualified households and individuals. So when we say lower economic barriers, that's things like providing financial assistance, rental assistance, down payment assistance, et cetera. Supporting the needs of the community's aging population. So those would be things like retrofits to homes to make them more accessible, and other improvements for seniors or the elderly. And then supporting community development projects. So those would be things like infrastructure, facility improvements. HUD allows eligible activities would be things like street and sidewalk upgrades, water, sewer, stormwater improvements, and park improvements and things of that nature. So looking at the schedule, where we are in this process, so in May, on May 22nd, we had the focus group meeting. The online needs assessment survey was open in early May. On June, again, as I mentioned, June 19th, that survey will close. We're looking at publishing that draft document for a 30-day comment in July, and then ending that in August, and then holding a final public hearing with you on August 12th. The drop-dead deadline for this draft document submittal to HUD, to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, is August 16th. If a document is not submitted to them by that deadline, then the city will not receive this funding source, this grant. So this CDBG grant, the application deadline is August 16th, and that application is this plan. So, and again, the program year would begin, essentially the program year has already begun, but they were late releasing the allocation. So there's an extension to that August 16th deadline. So that's where we are in this planning process. So with that, I'll open it up to any comments or questions that you may have. And we're looking particularly for input on those priority needs that were identified through the focus group and through the survey.
Commissioners, due to our low tech here instead of high tech, if you wouldn't mind, I'll do this first. This is Mayor Amy Shamrow speaking. Just maybe say your name and then ask your question so Amanda can kind of keep track of who she's talking to and answering, but feel free to just speak into your mics if you have any questions or comments.
I'd love to begin. I'm Commissioner Jackie Anderson. Thank you to Leslie and Amanda for your work to get us to this stage. I'd like to ask a couple of clarifying questions. First, should we be looking at just the $365,000 that are included in the October 24th through 2025 planning cycle, or should we be framing this more in terms of a 5-year perspective, which might have an amount of funding, if you just straight line that out, of about $1.8 million?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the five-year consolidated plan covers all 5 years. The $365,000 is just for the first year, so that would be the first program year of your five-year consolidated plan. So the planning period of the five-year consolidated plan actually is the whole 5 years, and that looks out for that 5-year period. So you are planning for a 5-year period. It's just that the first funding allocation out of that would be the $365,000.
Is the 365,000 our total allocation then, or is that an annual allocation?
So the 365,323 is your annual allocation for a 1-year period, and that would effectively be year 1 of the 5-year consolidated plan. And then every year thereafter, so year 2, 3, 4, and 5, HUD in theory would allocate additional funding annually to Traverse City. Now, the exact amount of funding that the city would receive each year is unknown. HUD publishes those formula allocations every year in the spring. So you don't really know what amount you'll be receiving, but it would likely be approximate to that amount annually.
Thank you. So the fact that these are large needs and relatively low funding, we should be taking into consideration with our prioritization. Thanks.
And I'm just going to ask a really quick follow-up to that. And I'm assuming, because of how this has been laid out, but just to make sure I'm correct, each allocation must be spent within that federal fiscal year?
Yes,
So the
so
October to
yes, the
October?
allocation is for the federal fiscal year for projects to be completed during the federal fiscal year.
So we couldn't wait to see what was happening for the next year and bundle them together to get maybe $600,000 or something?
Yes, so the amount for year 2 is unknown at this time, what that amount would be.
Okay, thank you. Tim?
This is Commissioner Tim Werner. I thought I saw in response to one of the questions ahead of time, something about 150%, so some amount of money can be rolled into the subsequent year?
Yes, so HUD has timeliness requirements, so you have to spend your money within a certain time frame. It's understood that certain things will be still in the process of closeout, or bills on projects will still be coming in or so forth. So there is a timeliness requirement for this funding, and it's a certain percentage of your funding amount that you're allowed to carry over or hold on to, essentially. I can't speak to exactly what that is for Traverse City. I would have to do some research about that amount, but you are strongly encouraged to spend your funding within your program year, essentially. But there is other expenditure requirements in terms of paying that off over time.
Go ahead, Heather.
This is Commissioner Heather Shaw. Can the 5-year plan be modified at all during these 5 years?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the end of the question.
Can the 5-year plan that's due in August be modified in subsequent years?
Yes, so there is the ability to amend the 5-year plan. So, for example, if you complete a 5-year plan and in year 2 or 3 you decide that you want to change some aspect of that plan, whether it is a funding amount or a goal or any kind of part of that plan, there is a substantial amendment process that HUD has. It requires a comment period again, so effectively any changes to the plan would have to go back through a consultation and comment period process to get public input on those changes prior to approval and submission.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Tim Werner again. I'm very interested in getting the input from the folks that would qualify, so that 80% AMI. I want to hear from them. Like I want, 100 entries. I think I heard maybe we have 160 and maybe 60% of those live in the city. But I'd like to hear from 100 individuals that live in the city that would actually qualify for this and hear what their interests are, what would make their lives easier. I appreciate the input that we have, and especially from the stakeholders, but, I'll just leave it at that. I really want to hear from the folks that could benefit.
I guess I'll follow up with a question of that. Would that be using our stakeholders as partners to push this out to the correct people? Because or the people that would be most likely to use the services because they are the connection we have? And are we looking at, I guess I would clarify this question a little bit to Commissioner Warner's intent. Would you be prioritizing city residents who meet that first then, or anyone in their network who has need that responds? Because I know that often surveys like this, we can't super target, but.
Well, I'd certainly want to get city residents, but not to the exclusion of people that live just outside the city and aspire to live in the city, because that's part of the target as well, but certainly
Sure.
some majority of those, 100 is a made-up number, but some majority of those 100 from the city, because they're living here now. Like what makes their lives easier is a simplistic word, but what would be helpful?
Thanks. I just say that because our partners are perhaps watching, or we'll come back into that. I think that helps clarify. Any other questions?
Go ahead.
This is Commissioner Anderson again, Amanda. Has there already been conversation on a couple of issues? Are any of these priorities more or less likely to be funded from other sources? And out of these, have you had conversation about which ones are best aligned with Traverse City's current strategic priorities and our mission?
Well, I can speak to all of the proposed priority needs that are listed are eligible under the CDBG grant program. In terms of aligning with the strategic priorities of the City of Traverse City, I would defer to city staff on that. However, I will say that all of these are eligible under the CDBG grant program in terms of what's being presented as priority needs before you.
Okay, maybe I wasn't clear in my question. I wondered, are any of these highly likely to be able to be funded from sources other than CBDG, or is that beyond your area of expertise?
That's probably, in terms of the funding sources that are available in Traverse City other than this federal funding source, I would not be able to answer that in terms of what other funding sources are available in your community to support them. There are other grants offered through state agencies, state grants. The state actually receives some federal funding that benefits some of these populations. However, I can't speak to what's specifically available for your community outside of the CDBG grant that we're talking about today.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I'm going to have Heather and then Tim.
So I did read through this a couple of times, and I didn't see anything in there that said we could do this, but I'm going to ask anyway. Would there be any way to include the creation of templates, building templates to, for example, turn a typical standard ranch home into a duplex? That would allow people to age in their homes and also pay their bills by renting out half the home. I'm also interested in workshops that would bring small developers and homeowners together to learn about the permitting process and meet people. So those two things. Is there any room in the
So for the CDBG program specifically, we'd have to look at the eligible activities list from HUD. However, I will say that some of the things you're describing fall more under the category of services. For example, the workshop that you're speaking to, and also to keep in mind that it would have to have a direct nexus correlation with low and moderate income persons or a low and moderate income neighborhood geographically. So if the housing benefits low and moderate income persons, and a low and moderate income person is, going to live in that housing, you would need to tie it back to that, because that's the requirement of this federal funding. So I will say we'd have to do some more research about the specific type of project that you're describing, but generally just a caveat that you would have to make sure that it directly relates to low and moderate income persons, and making sure that low and moderate income persons are the persons ultimately living in that housing.
Thank you. That's more positive
You're
than I
welcome.
thought.
Good.
Tim Werner again, and going back to Jackie Anderson's comment. So even if it's not on Wade Trim, I would hope that our city manager, working with staff, could bring back some guidance as far as what I was hearing the question, and that is, of all the possible places to spend our annual allocation, there might be some that are more likely to get supported by outside sources, and so maybe we bend our actions in a slightly different directions, or it helps us decide between A and B. If B is unlikely to get the outside support and A is. And by way of example, I'll use earlier item this evening with the Community Foundation and the $50,000. I commend our city manager for pulling that together, because we could have easily coughed up $50,000 and just done it ourselves. But she saw the opportunity to collaborate, get outside folks involved, and now hopefully they will stay involved because they saw the success there. So to me, that's a positive example of what can be done. And so it was a need, and like I said, we could have easily just 50,000 taken care of it and been done. And in the same way with I'll round it off to 350,000 a year, there might be opportunities for others in our community to help address some of these issues. And so, again, back to Jackie Anderson's, it would be helpful. It's not an exact science, but hey, our understanding is, whether it's the Community Foundation or others, have interests more in these areas. And so we're more likely to be able to work with them and get them to be part of supporting those efforts than we are for other areas. I know it's very nebulous, but I think there's value to it.
I would follow up with a question, this is Amy Shamro, that while we would have to go through a laborious process to amend the 5-year plan, to Commissioner Warner's point, let's say all of a sudden the state decides to spend a ton of money on sidewalk and infrastructure, and we've ranked that high, as long as it's in our top, list and part of our plan, we can always shift the kind of priority of it, correct? Or is this part of this kind of, once it's out there, they expect you to allocate 1, 2, 3 in a certain way? Or I guess, are they minding us that closely, or do we have some flexibility there?
I'm sorry, is that a?
Yeah, sorry, that was a
I'm gonna
question
talk
of
over-
how
over
flexible
city
are
staff
they?
If they were answering, I couldn't tell.
No, sorry, that was a question of how flexible are they once we put our plan out, if we're not allocating in ranked order, because to Commissioner Warner's point, some opportunities
Yeah.
came along.
Yes, so I can speak to that. So the priority needs aren't in ranked order from, like, for example, 1 to 5, with 1 being the highest and 5 being the lowest. The only 2 ranking categories that HUD puts on these are high and low. So basically, which ones are high priorities, which ones are low priorities out of the list. But they do have the grantee identify priority needs and a list of priority needs. In terms of spending funding on priority needs, so the 5-year plan would include these priority needs as the priority needs for the 5-year period. With that said, as I mentioned, they could be amended from time to time if the priority needs don't align any longer with what the community is looking to do. So for example, if you come up to year 2 or 3 and you're saying, we're just not interested in doing these types of activities, they don't align with what the community is looking for, you can always amend it, or if you need to add an additional priority need or remove a priority need, there's an amendment process. But with that said, the 5-year period and the priority needs covering the 5-year period, the only thing that probably is a more short-term looking component of this is the annual action plan, and that's where you're deciding how you're going to expend, for example, in this year 1, the $365,000, you would have to identify specific projects that you're going to complete within the 1-year period, that first year. And those are where HUD is looking for specific details for how you're going to spend that funding during the first program year, year 1, which would be fiscal year 2024. So that's where the specificity comes into play at this time. The priority needs, looking at the priority needs that you have up here, are quite general, and a lot of activities could fall under these, but you ultimately, for the first year annual action plan, would need to identify projects, and that's where that $365,000 would be spent. So you would, I guess my point is that's your more short-term looking plan component of this rather than the priority needs. The priority needs are more longer looking 5-year period priority needs.
Thank you.
Does that help kind of frame short-term versus long-term, what you're thinking about 5-year versus 1 year?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay.
It's a draw between you two.
Go ahead.
Jackie Anderson again, Amanda. Did I read somewhere in the rules of the road that it's possible to bundle these funds with brownfield funds?
You can combine funds. So, for example, you could match funds or leverage funds with other funding sources. So there's, a lot of communities try to match funds or try to leverage funds with other funding sources. There's nothing prohibiting you from combining funds in that manner. So, for example, using CDBG to help eliminate slum or blight in the neighborhood, and then you've got some other funding from some other source to help do that also.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have 2 questions.
Just as long, let me caveat with that, with saying, as long as the activity that you're putting the funding toward, the little piece of CDBG funding that you're putting toward it, as long as that still meets all of the eligibility criteria for the CDBG program. So we always like to say if it's even $1 of CDBG funding is going towards that project, that means that entire project has to be eligible under the CDBG program.
Got it.
Commissioner Shaw, again, how many funding priorities are usually included in the 5-year plan? Is it typical to have 5 or is 3?
We've had communities have 3 priorities. We've had communities have 20 priorities. So it's really community decided. There's no HUD minimum or maximum for the priority needs. I would say on average, we see most communities have, 5 to 10 maybe. So.
Okay.
But we've seen as few as 3 and as many as 20. So it's all what the community wants to focus on during their 5-year period.
Focus on 20 projects. I don't know if that's quite. I have one other question. So Wade Trim is managing this whole 5-year plan process. Who manages all of this over the next 5 years? Does Wade Trim continue to collect that 20% approximate consulting fee over the next 5 years and manages the action plan and the strategy plan?
Right now we're just assisting with development of the 5-year annual action plan. I can't speak to the subsequent years. I don't believe we're contracted for the subsequent years at this point. So we're just helping you get started with this program. And again, Traverse City is a new grantee. So this is just, getting the groundwork in place so that you can move forward for the next, year 2, 3, 4, and 5. But we're just helping with year 1 at this point.
Yeah, Commissioner Shaw, so we still have some decisions to make on how and if we use that administrative portion, the full 20%, some of it, we can use it to offset the costs of staff who are working towards these goals. That was fairly common in Clinton Township. We used the full 20% to offset the salary of the individual who was overseeing the program, and you have to fill out some paperwork. You have to submit it with payroll so that you can identify that you are using that staff time. It's entirely up to the city. Does that sound right, Leslie?
I know that Amanda can't hear me from this microphone, but I believe that our contract does have the ability for us to have additional ongoing help for either 1 year or 2 years, I think, for them to assist us and to help us with the reporting. It's kind of complicated getting all of the financial reporting and reimbursements through that system, and I think that the full contract amount includes some of that time, but it's optional if we need it.
Other questions? Go ahead, Tim.
Well, not a question, but in the memo, it looked like feedback was being solicited from us. And so from the stakeholder meeting and the proposed priorities out of that meeting, what is top on my list, like from that subset, would be permanent supportive housing, because this body has discussed that so much, and there are a range of opportunities out there. So for this coming year's expenditure, I would be much in favor of permanent supportive housing, and then also what I'd referenced earlier, like whatever, a survey of, the folks that qualify, some portion of that money going toward programs that are indicated by that feedback. Thanks.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Commissioner Shaw, I don't know if I need to keep doing that. I totally agree. The permanent supportive housing is at the top of the list. I'm also interested in helping the shelters. Oh, winter's coming again. They need help, both the daytime and the nighttime. It's a Band-Aid. It's not a solution. Housing is the only solution. However, until we have that housing, we've got to take care of the homeless during the winter. And so I would add that to the list. The one thing I'm not interested in at all is number 3 about rental down payment assistance programs. The problem with this is that you're subsidizing the consumption of something. And when you subsidize consumption, prices go up, and it makes it's like lowering interest rates. The housing prices go up. So that's one that I am not interested in.
Thank you.
I'd reinforce the concept of shelter and adding specifically day shelter and emergency shelter year-round as being high needs. I also, as I was comparing the results of the focus group to the community survey results that were in the packet, they weren't precisely aligned, and I do think that adds some urgency to Commissioner Werner's suggestion that we, during the public comment period, really make an extra effort to reach those people who would benefit from this program, find out what their stated needs are.
Commissioner Stanley?
I'm glad to hear that we are interested in a year-round shelter and a day shelter. I would like to see a large portion of the first year's resources go toward those services. We have relied heavily on a volunteer population and our communities of faith to care for and protect the unsheltered in our community and keep them from freezing to death in our winters or dying of heat exposure in our summers. And I think with this funding, we can certainly do more. Obviously, the permanent supportive housing is the next important step for that. I do want to point out that the survey, while it's a small number, yeah, I think yes, we want to hear from the people who would be impacted by these funds. I'm someone who took the survey. I'm certainly not in the target demographic, but I do think that the stakeholders that were convened represent and know very well and very intimately the needs of the people 80% or below of area AMI. So I would say I would personally put somewhat more stock in that than the random responses of people like myself who read the Bay Brief and other things and click the buttons. And I do think that those stakeholders would be good resources to reach out to connect us to the people who could benefit from these programs moving forward.
And I would add to that, also likely to tell us where the funding's going to be popular over the next couple of years. Having been doing this for a few years now, you see the state will suddenly show up with housing money, or suddenly they'll show up with infrastructure money, but very rarely does anything come together. So sometimes we see those waves, and that might, to Commissioner Warner's question, indicate to us what we might be likely to find funding for versus really need to focus this money on. Other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, this was just information gathering, am I correct? You don't need any action from the board at this time?
Correct.
All right, well, thank you, Amanda, for sticking with us here and going through all the various tech that we have available. And thank you for your help on this, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for your input, everyone.
All right. Let that tech be taken away there. So we now have the first agenda item, we're back to that, which is the public hearing on the budget amendments for the fiscal year 23-24. We as a body can have that conversation, but like we did last time with the public hearing, I'd like to open it up in case there's public, so that can be a part of our conversation after. So I think all I have to do is just bang my imaginary gavel, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I will now officially open the public hearing for fiscal year 23-24 budget amendments.
And I'll just state for anyone who wishes to address the commission that this is the opportunity for a public to express their thoughts on this matter and therefore for the commission to consider those. So anyone who's interested in speaking to the proposed budget amendments for this fiscal year, please come to the microphone. Not seeing anyone, Mayor Shammer, you can close the public hearing.
All right, there it is, closed. All right, now we'll open it back up for general discussion from the commission and/or in motion.
I move that the budget amendments as outlined in the June 4th, 2024 communication from the city financial analyst be approved.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Shaw. Any further discussion at the commission level here? Seeing none, there's another chance. Any general public comment on this? Seeing none, I'll bring it back for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Thank you all for that. We'll now move on to item number 2, which is consideration of adopting a resolution approving the budget for the DDA 2024-2025. So that will be this coming fiscal year. We've had some discussions on this, so I will take a motion or any questions. Go ahead, Heather.
Yeah, I just want to say that I still find the DDA budget impossible to parse. The amended, the stuff that was sent over to us today from Harry Burkholder, the old budgets didn't match the budget that was in the 2024 city manager's annual budget packet. None of the numbers were lining up. Good Lord. I find it really frustrating, and it does not grow great confidence. However, I'm just willing to let everything go forward because I do appreciate the revisions that were done in those budget summaries and getting the marketing and communications out of the DDA's, out of the TIF fund into the general operating fund. And I have it from the best possible source that a public body such as the City Commission or the DDA may spend money to provide factual information regarding a ballot proposal to the public, but they may not advocate for or against such a proposal. So that's all I have to say on that.
Thank you, Commissioner Shaw. Any other comments or a motion?
I guess this is the right time to share my comment. Once again, I'll vote no on the modified DDA budget. I was dismayed when the budget not only came back with a $200,000 increase in total spending, but no acknowledgement that a potentially game-changing vote on the future of tax increment financing is only 6 months away. A personal note, my dad kept a quote on his desk that said, we can't direct the wind, but we can adjust the sails. And I am disappointed that the DDA failed to adjust their sails for any changing winds ahead and continue to spend tax dollars on projects that may or may not come to fruition. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mark.
I move that the resolution adopting the Downtown Development Authority budget for fiscal year 2024 to 2025 be adopted.
Support.
Thank you. Tim Wilson, and second by Stanley. All right, we kind of did out of order, but that's okay. Any further comment on this motion? Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I know that there were many people in the community upset by last week's meeting. To me, though, it was the process, and the process has shown that it works. So whether we call it like making the sausage, and some people's stomachs were turned by seeing the sausage made, but that's the process to me. Like, so I think the process has worked, and since that meeting, I've talked to at least 4 of the DDA board members, sat down with several, been a great conversations. I mean, very professional. And now here we are tonight, that's likely to be approved, which is great. I'll be voting against it still. And if people want to see more, it was back at a joint meeting between the City Commission and the DDA, October 9th, 2023, while I spoke more specifically about why I'm not supportive. And though the DDA has moved in the right direction, they've not moved far enough to get my vote. But I do commend them for the efforts and at least moving in the right direction. And to share with the public from a high level why I'm not supportive still, it's because this body previously has stated that a top goal and objective is to view all of our goals and actions through the lens of climate change. And we have a mid-century goal of being carbon neutral. And so I've spoken previously and at that October 9th meeting about how I don't see the DDA as being part of that. And so I'm sticking with that. So again, I commend the DDA for moving in the right direction, but it's not enough to get my vote. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Warner. Go ahead, Mitch.
Yes, in response to that comment from Commissioner Warner about some people might have been, had their stomachs turned about seeing the sausage made. I would say that the sausage was made over the 2 months leading up to that process, and we had a ready-made sausage for testing, and 5 members of this board decided that that sausage wasn't up to their taste. So then we effectively took it out of the casing, picked out some of the stuff, and shoved it back in. So let's see if we can actually get 5 votes for this sausage.
Thank you, Commissioner Treadwell. Hopefully no one's hungry.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Any other comments from here? Okay, we'll open up to any public comment on this item, and
Yeah, I'll state the rules for public comment. Anyone wishing to address the commission, please come forward to the podium, state your name and address, indicate if you're a city resident, non-city resident, or city business owner. We have a 3-minute time allotment. When your time has elapsed, the timer will beep, and we ask that all language be respectful to everyone.
Jim Crothers, 218 West 11th Street. I am a city resident. I'm here to commend Commissioners Anderson, Werner, and Shaw for thinking critically about our budget and finally holding people accountable for trying to move things forward. It's clear these 3 commissioners are good for this city, just from tonight's discussion on other items. They're one of the few, some of the few that actually think about the issues, do their homework, and present their issues and arguments in front of the public. So I really am, I think it's important that we, commend the 3 of you for really doing this and not just letting these rubber stamping bodies push budgets forward as we have for years. And yes, I was part of that for many, many years, but I also spoke out. But when you're 1 and 2 people, it's very difficult to get a platform for people to listen to you sometimes. But there is a lot of misinformation going out there about TIF and the DDA, and it's being spread. The sky is falling attitude about the DDA ending and all that. It's being spread by people that are supporters of the DDA and supporters of TIF. I think a lot of people in this community are just trying to get out the real information. And I will continue to share my information as someone who sat on the committee that formed the DDA and TIF districts back in the 90s. And I will continue that message. You can see it in the Express this week. And I'm going to continue that message. This was a temporary tool. So I'm thankful that both Commissioner Anderson and Werner are really questioning spending on TIF 97 any further when it really was meant to close in 2027. And we do have 2 referendums coming up from citizens that have been part of this community for decades And they're not idiots, they're not stupid, they're smart people who've done the work to get out there, to talk to the community, to knock on the doors, do the political process to put referendums forward. And we're going to continue that work until the citizens have their say and we move this forward. But thank you to the 3 commissioners that are listening to the citizens.
Thank you, Jim.
Justin Reed, 630 Cottage Drive, Apartment 1B, Charter City, Michigan, city resident. So, let's say, right now, we don't want to invest into our community, and and with anything else, any investment has risk to it. Anything that has to do with the DDA, anything that has to do with any city budget or any of that, there's always a risk. And unfortunately, the only industry in Traverse City is the tourism industry and the service industry. So those investments from TIF and those investments from DDA have proven very, very good, and those things should continue, because if they don't continue, then what other industry is going to replace the tourism and service industry? I don't think we've got manufacturing in Traverse City brings enough employees to come to Grand Traverse County, because we're known for manufacturing. No, we're not. We're known for our tourism industry and service, and that is the only thing that we have in Traverse City. So, I mean, if you want to go ahead and think of any other industry that comes to mind, then go ahead and say it. But without the service industry and the tourism industry, Traverse City would not be even on the map whatsoever. And this is a growing community, and you have to understand that. And with a growing community, things have risk to them. Any sort of grants, any sort of monies, there's always going to be a risk for it. You do not have a crystal ball. You cannot go ahead and say, well, geez, that didn't work out. Let's never, ever, ever, ever do that again. No, you can't just go ahead and a la carte things. Not like a taco bar. I mean, that's what you guys are doing, is just saying, well, you know what? Let's a la carte this and a la carte that. And sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes it has to be in one budget. And same thing with federal grants. There are federal standards, and there's federal milestones that you have to process. So, with the TIF 97 and with the DDA, I think this whole entire misinformation, and I don't think that's correct. I think that the information that the DDA has, that firm that they hired for the TIF 97, to give the public more of a information, not for or against it, but just information in general. And that is pretty much common with everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Any other public comment on this item? Seeing none, any other comment from the body? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Anderson,
No.
Commissioner Shaw,
Yes.
Commissioner Stanley,
Yes.
Commissioner Treadwell,
Yes.
Commissioner Werner,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson,
Yes.
and Mayor Shamrow.
Yes, motion passes. Moving on to item 3, which is now 4. Sorry about that. Consideration of authorizing an agreement for professional services for foundational work and strategic planning, and I'll hand that over to you, Liz.
Thank you, Mayor Shamrow. As I mentioned in my June 3rd memo, you'd be aware, I'm recommending a multifaceted approach to our strategic planning endeavors, because this is the first time this community has done this. I thought that some upfront governance training and sort of the roles and responsibilities of all the different parties in this process would be warranted. Barry Dunn was a very impressive firm. The staff that interviewed agreed that they would serve us very well in this particular area. And so they are going to do, they're going to meet with individual commissioners and department heads. They're going to put together like a pre-training, like assessment memo on what they've discovered and what they think they need to focus on. Then they'll do a post sort of like a post memo, like a final recommendations on how we can really make this, strengthen this process as we then shift into Future IQ. Future IQ actually will be a part of this process. They'll kind of be a fly on the wall, but they'll be there so that both firms can get to know each other. And then once we start the strategic planning process, we will turn back to Barry Dunn to help us implement. We just want to make sure that we have a right size of a scope of what they're going to help us do, and we weren't able to get to that point just yet. We wanted to get the process started so we don't duplicate efforts. And so right now, I'm simply asking for that upfront starting point, and then I'll be able to communicate back probably later in the summer where we stand on how we're going to be starting to get everything going. I'm really excited that we're finally here at this point.
Okay. Questions from the commission or a motion? Go ahead, Jackie.
I move that the mayor and city clerk execute an agreement with Barry Dunn for professional services to include foundational work in connection with upcoming strategic planning in the amount of $27,500 plus travel expenses in the amount of $4,000, and that the city manager be authorized to manage a 10% contingency in connection with the agreement, with such agreement subject to approval as to its substance by the city manager and its form by the city attorney, with funds to come from the City Commission budget, Fund 101-101-801.
Thank you.
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Warner. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you for that. We'll get another step to getting us on that road to the strategic planning, so thank you for that. Okay, so now we will move into item number 5, 6, depending how we're looking at it, which is our continued discussion about the wastewater treatment plant UV improvement project.
Thank you, Mayor Shamro. Yes, I want to thank Mr. Krieger and the design build team for answering a number of questions and getting those published in the packet for tonight. I hope that they were helpful. I know that we had some follow-up questions today that I was able to email out later this afternoon, and we do have the team here to answer any other questions. And I wasn't sure exactly how we wanted to proceed, but I hoped you liked the photos. I hope those were helpful in the updated memo. And again, Mr. Krieger's here, and so is some of our staff and members of the design build team.
And I'll turn it over to the body here with the note that I think we did get some of our questions. We got the document, which is really what it was, with a lot of the answer, or all the answers that were asked. So are there further questions, or does anybody need clarification? Or we can move ahead with a motion tonight, whatever the body would like to see. Commissioner Warner.
A lot of the questions were my questions. I mean, everybody up here knows that, but the public doesn't, because I have an engineering background that overlaps with a lot of this. And because of that, I feel a responsibility to ask the questions, because it's written in such a way that, to me, it's not written in a, here's your choice, this or that, and as lay people, here's the information to help you make the choice between A and B. It's written in, we're the engineers and this is what we recommend. So really, we could have foregone the whole report. It could have put any price tag on it, and it could have just said, we're the engineers, so we recommend you do this. And we would do it, because the overarching risk sounds like, well, we need the wastewater treatment plant to be functional and to do what it's supposed to do. And so one of the emails I sent today was asking, how was the engineering team trying to prepare an actual decision for this body to make? That didn't get answered, so I'll ask it again now. How was the engineering team trying to present an actual choice to this body, or were they trying to actually present a choice to this body?
Go ahead, Art.
Hi, Art Krieger, Director of Utilities. I think we tried to present the two most probable options that could happen there. And so alternative one was less cost, but it was not the favored alternative by the design team because it had some shortfalls to it. It was kind of a Band-Aid approach on old equipment. And we're doing a large project, and there's no better time than to do the project in our minds correctly, which is to put the best foot forward, even though it's more costly, to pay for it in today's dollars versus kicking the can down the road, so to speak, for 20-plus years out. Things are just going to get more and more expensive. So we feel as a design team that the recommendation for alternative 2 is what should be done for the best interest of the plant long-term, and there's many reasons. There's pros and cons to both options. Cost is obviously more, but if we look at our debt that was just paid off and the loan amount that could come due to this project, it works, we feel, with the financing part of it. We have a good chance with a SRF loan from federal money, and that is a really great chance at this time in our lifetime where we haven't seen that kind of money come in, where we could do projects like this for low interest possibly. So we presented it in the best way that we could to provide the facts. You do have a choice, alternate 1, it's less money. We have alternate 2 is more. We're just recommending the alternate 2. So hopefully that helps frame it a little bit for you.
And then I did get, and thank you to the city manager, a response to one of the questions I asked today, and that was, I asked the question. Oh, the incentive for Hubble, Roth, and Clark to help Traverse City save money. Like, was there something in the agreement, and it was forwarded to the entire city commission, that Hubble, Roth, so this was in the agreement, maybe not the exact words, but it was in a memo. Hubble, Roth, and Clark will work with the city and wastewater treatment plant to evaluate potential cost-saving measures during this phase of work. So to me, then the follow-up is, so where are the cost-saving measures that HRC, maybe they're buried in there and it wasn't called out, but it would have been of value to spell out in a side box, whatever, in the report, where HRC acted in the interest of the city to save us money. Because to me, the document reads as though everybody was in a room and was like, well, should we do this? Yeah, let's do that one. There's less risk, there's less whatever, let's just go with that, let's go with that. But where did HRC actually provide that service of watching out for the cities and the city ratepayers, and not just, yeah, let's spend more money, but let's be really conscious of, do we really need that, or is that just something we want?
I think I'm going to ask Todd Sneathen from HRC to address that question.
Todd Sneathen, Hubble, Roth, and Clark, Vice President. With regard to our role in this project, is we're the owner's representative, and so we are really an extension of your staff. We work very closely with Art and his staff to try to come up with what is felt as the best interest of the facility. This is not a simple project, and I know all of you are aware of that. We spent significant amount of time reviewing the documents that were presented. We did a report a number of years ago to try to evaluate what would be some possible options. And we've also looked at the different options that the design build team has put in front of us. Have we gone through and specifically checked boxes of where we saved money? We felt this has been an iterative process that we've worked with the contractor and the city on in order to reach that agreement. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Somewhat, thank you.
Do we have other questions or a motion? Go ahead, Heather.
Just a minute, I have a question. This one I forgot in my little list, but it's really important. It seems that wipes, the flushable wipes, should not be flushed.
No.
Absolutely.
Well, then
right.
we have to talk about this. Use some money and put it in the Record Eagle and just tell people over and over again, you cannot flush those wipes. Because they do it. Everybody thinks you can.
Don't pour fat
No,
down
that's
the
good.
drain.
If I could just speak to that, I don't know if you remember Congresswoman Candace Miller. She was also our Secretary of State, and She was also a supervisor of Harrison Township. She's held every position in elected local government and federal government I think you can have, but she's now the Public Works elected official down in Macomb, and she started a very serious campaign with her connections in Congress to have anything stating that these are flushable to remove from packaging, because it's destroying multi-million-dollar machines, and if you saw what the clogs look like in Macomb County, you'd be horrified. But I just want to let you know that I could do some research, but I know that there are literally like Senate hearings on this going on.
Yeah, I mean, there are electronic billboards, there's all different kinds of ways to, radio, let people know that they should not be doing this. Okay,
Can I add to that?
oh, sure.
So, in the not-too-distant past, we did put out a little campaign, a mailer with bills, and it's called No Wipes in the Pipes. So it's kind of got a ring to it. We should probably keep that going. We provided some really interesting pictures in there of Jacob's staff cleaning out is it weekly you do this, or? Yes. Probably weekly, they're down at Front Street, our largest pump station, going in there and pulling these wipes out. So we had some great pictures in there, like, do you want us to have to do this all the time? Please don't put your wipes down the pipes. But anyway, continue with
Thank
your
you.
other-
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, this actually just happened. The House passed the Wipes Act on June 11th.
There we go.
Literally 6 days ago. So I'll get you some more information. I'll pass it out to the commission.
Thank you. Okay, the other question is a little odd, and it came in late, and I'm sorry about that, but I hope you can answer it. So, the question is about pipeline congestion on either side of the treatment plant. So you've got this twofold system. You've got stuff coming in, and you've got stuff coming out. How much can the plant process, and how much waste can you get into the plant? Is there any kind of problem with that, the in and out?
There isn't at this point. We look at the capacity of the plant. So we're operating on an average day about 4.66, call it 4.7 million gallons a day coming in. There is the BOD, biological oxygen demand. That's the stuff in the wastewater that the bugs feed on and digest and break down. So there is a limit to that, what the plant can also treat, and that's about 20,200. And we've been hovering in that half of that range, roughly 10,000 range, plus or minus, and that's very approximate. So there's two capacities. The BOD coming in and what we can treat up to 20,200, whatever units those are, pounds per day. And then there is the flow capacity, which is that average flow day max of 8.5 million gallons a day, and we're in that 4.7 range. So, does that help?
Yeah, it sounds like everything's working for now. And certainly getting these upgrades will keep it healthy for
Yes.
a while. But the capacity is the capacity. It's not like we're increasing capacity. We're just increasing efficiency.
Yes, we're working on all the different processes in the first half of the plant mainly, except for that UV, which is the final zap of the effluent. But we're working on the front half because that is where the need is the greatest right now. It's made it through the last 20-year program, period where we had a loan to pay off where those $31 million improvements were made for the UV system. The membrane system was put in and upgraded. So, yeah, it's pretty common, 20-year cycles. You see a lot of large plants and even smaller ones do upgrades because they can deal with financing it, and then when that's paid off, they move on to the next need. So here's where we're at.
Go ahead, Tim.
I'm sorry, you had a question?
No, go ahead.
Just, am I correct that the administrative consent order was not because of a release of fecal coliform, but because the actual flow capacity was exceeded for the UV system?
I believe that's correct, but I'm going to have Mark come up and confirm, because he's a little more intimately involved.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
so, and that to me is indicative of a lot of this, and that is, I keep going back to the I&I, but the root of tonight's conversation is stormwater at our wastewater treatment plant, and it still performed as it should, even when it was overloaded by the stormwater, because we didn't release pollutant levels into the Boardman River because the systems upstream of the UV worked as they should. So the membrane filtration system, which this community has spent a lot of time discussing in the past, worked as it should. The UV system is required by the state and is just redundant. And so we're then under the administrative consent order and have to invest millions into the UV system because of I&I. And to me, in the reading of the documents so far and the questions that have been answered for me, the preliminary screening and the grit removal are largely being recommended to be changed out because of I&I. I've asked multiple times for quantitative answers and have gotten qualitative answers back. And while this well could be the path forward and very good reasoning for it, I'm not prepared to support it yet tonight because the answers are incomplete. There's too much, these are engineers and they should be able to provide quantitative reasoning and put dollar signs and risk assessments behind it. And there's a lot of qualitative hedging. Things are old and they need replaced. Well, I'm getting old, I probably need replaced. We had that same discussion with the membranes that, they're old, we need to, it's an emergency, we have to replace them all this year. And there were some very heated discussions here and at DPW about, yeah, they're old, but if they're not showing signs of failure, how do we evaluate when to replace them? I mean, we talked about it at many meetings here at the City Commission and finally slowed that train, so to speak, and we started replacing them, but on an annual basis, not all at once. It wasn't an emergency. And there again, say for the preliminary screening and grit removal, there's nothing quantitative yet that says we've been tracking this aspect of expected failure and here's how it's tracked over the past years. So there's plenty of opportunity. I'm sure there's plenty of data, but it's not been shared with us in a convincing manner. And I know I'm just the one vote, and that's fine. I don't expect my colleagues, because there's a lot here. They don't have the background in this, but I can't support it tonight. I could probably support it at some point in the future with more thorough answers. Thanks.
Okay, with that said, I really appreciate that and your expertise because admittedly, I do not have a background or expertise in this and really rely on staff, owners, reps, and other experts to bring forward and do what's best on behalf of our city. So in a yes or no question from Liz, Art, I trust you guys. Are we getting what we pay for?
I would say yes, in the
Yeah,
end, we
so-
will.
So
because, I mean,
it's
gonna be
fair market value, everybody's looked at it, what we're paying for it is because it was brought up, there was issues of like, we're gonna look for savings and et cetera, but I'm more concerned with, is it something we're gonna need? And are we getting what we pay for? And you've already said that, and it's a good point, that in the future, cost is always just expected to go up. So if it's worth doing now, I trust you.
Motion.
Yeah, sure. I'll move that the city commission selects alternative 2 for the wastewater treatment plant primary treatment and UV improvements project.
Support.
Thank you. Okay, any further comments on this now? There's a motion. Go ahead, Heather.
I just have one kind of big comment. I really think we need to keep a close eye on the capacity of the water treatment plant. And Housing North estimates that there are nearly 1,000 new households coming online in Grand Traverse County this year, plus another 3,000 coming in the next 3 years. Now, they may not all be in the service area, but we don't know where these are. I mean, I don't have a map that shows who's using what and how much. there are, I don't know, how many hotel rooms coming on. Are those counted? And that's the point. Somebody really needs to keep track of this stuff because it's not just the wastewater, it's our drinking water too. We saw that big study. Do we have to think about putting another intake in West Bay? Do we need to move the one that's in East Bay out farther and deeper because of the population that's coming here? Our infrastructure isn't just used by the city, it's used by townships. And so I hope that during this strategic planning that's coming up, that we really get to dig into these county-wide issues and start thinking about when are we going to have to build a new plant? Who's going to build it? Where are they going to build it? And also the freshwater intake. And most importantly, what can we do right now to protect these large infrastructure investments that we have in Traverse City? So that's what I have to say about that. I hope the strategic plan really digs into this because we are not an island here. We've got lots of people that feed off our infrastructure, and we need to know how much we can handle.
See some nodding from Mark too, so appreciate that comment. Any other comments? Go ahead, Jackie.
Just to say I'm going to support the motion as it was made. I would like to, as a body, have us explore what can be done to take forward steps on stormwater management as a city priority, and understanding how they are so closely connected, and that we can do good things on both sides. And it sounds like this has been years-long struggle to move stormwater management forward, and I would like to tackle that as a commission if we can.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Anderson. You actually also brought up a point that I forgot to share with Lauren, who was not at our last meeting, that my question was, as we move forward on some of this, obviously we have this plan before us, but if some exploration was done, and I think this was brought up by Commissioner Warner and prompted my question, that to replace the porous pipes that we have now, we had a price tag, or we had an idea, is that, there's nothing that says we only, if we go to bond, it's only for alternative two, and we couldn't potentially look at other items that might have to do with I&I with that could be done simultaneously or as part of the same kind of overall project.
Right, so that's what we can work with bond council on that when we get to that, when and if we get to that point, to write a bond proposal that's broad enough. For example, when we did the one parking deck, the Park Street entrance was included in the bond proposal and in all the documentation, so we were able to use some of the bond proceeds for that. It wasn't just for the deck. It's just an example. So yep, that's something we can work on with bond
And
council.
thank you, and I don't say that that's the one and only solution, but as we have these conversations that, as they progress with this moving forward, that could be some discussions we have as well when it comes to financing and these bigger issues that you're bringing up, Jackie, so thank you for that. Any other comments? Okay, I will open this up now then for public comment. If you have any public comment on this item, please feel free.
Jim Carruthers, 218 West 11th Street. I'm a city resident. I'm reading from the packet of the list of questions. Have any of the townships reached 80% of their capacity or 90% of their capacity collectively, referencing the master sewer agreement? And the answer was, an answer is to be determined and provided at the June 17th, 2024 City Commission meeting. I don't know if I was listening or if I heard that answer, but I'd like to hear that answer. And also, I would like to know, I'm not fresh on the master sewer agreement from being involved years ago, but what's the percentage of the townships, the metro townships, and what is their percentage, and are they going to be paying for a portion of this? Is that part of it? Remind me. And then on the lines of what Heather was saying, and to also comment what Commissioner Anderson was saying about stormwater and Mr. Warner. Jeanine Easterday and I, over a decade ago, worked with the Watershed Council on starting the stormwater management idea and figuring it out. We've talked about it for decades. It's time we start doing something about it, considering economic development, tourism, and this bay that sits right out here, that's our economic driver. And if we can talk about stormwater management and keeping it clean, but we should start doing something about it, because we talk about Line 5, we talk about pollution, we talk about spills in the bay. We get spills in the bay, that's our tourism, that's our economic value to this area, this fresh water. So let's start keeping it clean and working towards making it clean. But I'm curious about the township's capacity. Thank you.
Thank you. Really quick, wait just a second, Art, let me see if there's any other public comment. And then we'll have you come up. Go right ahead, please.
Quick one. Martin Dudziak, city resident, permanent resident. And this is more of a comment and a strong suggestion. Within this system, and applying also to others, but certainly with our water treatment and waste, SCADA, it's a technical term, supervisory control and data acquisition. So this is the digital, electronic, and very susceptible systems that regulate and control all the machinery, whatever our capacity. And in our time, SCADA-type systems are highly at risk for, guess what, cyber attacks, of which there's been some recent experience in the ransomware area. I just ask and bring up that the issue of SCADA security and looking forward to more types of attacks could be sort of a primary, not sort of, a primary area of interest for the future, for the planning of this and related systems. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Sreed, city resident, just to add about the stormwater, we were talking earlier about the community development block grant, and that that is a possible solution with federal grant money. That, you know, there's gonna be open comment about that, and information that's gonna be developed over time, and I think that might be an option for looking at stormwater. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the commission, but Art, I know you're ready to address some of the questions, so you can go right ahead.
Yes, regarding that master sewer agreement, 2017 capacity, unfortunately, we got locked out of our files, so I couldn't do the research I wanted to for this meeting. I believe they're not at that capacity yet, because overall, the plant is only at about 50%. So it seems unlikely they would, but it's something I wanted to look into further before I gave you the exact final answer. And so the other part of that was the participation. So the townships have 45% participation, and the city has 55%. So by contract, we're going to be divvying up the cost for this project.
Thank you.
And then speaking slightly to the cybersecurity, we are on board, well aware of the potential threats for SCADA. Mark and I shared lots of information back and forth. We're receiving regular communication from state and federal sources with latest technologies and things, and we're working to see that we are protected as much as possible for our system. So just want to assure you we're not ignoring anything like that, those threats.
Great, thank you.
Art, when you do find out if any single township has reached 80% or collectively the whole 90%, will you please let us know? Because I know I would very much like to know, and I'm sure the rest of my colleagues up here would. Okay, thank you.
Great.
That's all I
Okay.
had.
Thank you. Okay, we do have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Wilson and a second by Commissioner Treadwell. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Shaw,
Yes?
Commissioner Stanley, Commissioner Treadwell,
Yes.
Commissioner Werner,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
and Mayor Shamrow.
Yes. Okay, motion passes. And can I do the next two motions as one together?
You
Okay.
can.
Okay. And really quickly, can I just do that by adding both names, or do I have to do each one individually?
You
Okay.
can add both names.
So I will help our commissioners out here just a little bit, that maybe someone could make the motion that the city commission enter into closed session immediately following the public comment portion of the agenda to consider the periodic personal evaluation of the city attorney, Lauren Triple-Lout, and the city manager, Elizabeth Vogel, as requested by the city attorney and the city manager, as authorized by MCL 15.268A. Does anybody want to make that motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Shaw. Okay, any discussion on this? Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, is this a roll call,
It
correct?
is, yes.
I remembered. Go
Uh,
ahead.
Commissioner Stanley,
Yes.
Commissioner Treadwell,
Yes.
Commissioner Werner,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Shaw,
Yes?
and Mayor Shamrow.
Yes, all right, thank you, everyone. So after public comment, we will go in for the reviews, but we'll continue with the rest of the agenda for this moment. Next, we have appointments, and he is here for his farewell, but we thank Chief Tuller for years of service on the Planning Commission, but he is stepping down and enjoying some more time to himself and probably actually working some more. So we have a appointment for Jerry Swanson to take his place on planning. Do we have a motion for that?
I move that the mayor's appointment of Jerry Swanson to the remaining term expiring November 10th, 2025 on the Planning Commission be approved, seat previously held by Jim Tuller.
Jerry's a great employee. I support this motion.
Great, thank you, Commissioners Shaw and Treadwell. Any other discussion on this? Seeing none, any public comment on this? Seeing none, I'll bring it back for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you for your service, Chief. You're here. We look forward to Jerry's term. All right, next we have the Arts Commission appointments, and this was a doozy of an ad hoc, so thank you all for your work. So I'll take any report if you have one, or if you just want to make the motion, go ahead.
I'll just make the motion. I recommend that Chelsea O'Brien, Caitlin Early, and Joshua Hoisenton be reappointed to the Arts Commission for the terms expiring May 18th, 2027, and that Martin Dudziak be appointed to the Arts Commission to the term expiring May 18th, 2027, seat previously held by My Stanley, as recommended by the ad hoc committee consisting of Commissioner Anderson, Commissioner Treadwell, and Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson.
Oh, I'll second that.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Shaw. Any discussion of this? And thank you all. It was quite a bit to make that whole again, so we appreciate that. Seeing none, any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Okay, and we'll now move on to public comment. We have a reserved public comment. So we have Harry Swoiston, I'm sorry if I butchered your last name, of the Boom neighborhood, here to speak about the Bryant Park pedestrian access. So you've got your reserved time.
All right, thank you. Yeah, Harry Swiston. I want to start back in an article. It was in a TC Ticker by Beth Milliken, February 6, 2020. The Future of Peninsula Drive. February 6, 2020. The Future of Peninsula Drive. Traverse City Commissioners voted this week to support taking over a section of the Peninsula Drive. Move that will give the city power to improve, including potential anti-pedestrian upgrades or redesigning intersection by Bryant Park. MDOT is seeking to turn over 17.3 miles, 7.74 in the city, and MDOT says its main focus on key trunk lines connect communities such as US 31, M72, and then isolated spur roads like M73, Peninsula Drive are better managed locally. Better managed locally. I asked to have this all put up on the screen. Frank, somebody I connected with, he was supposed to have this. I don't know, I'm 80 years old, my technology is very limited. So I guess I'm gonna have to just read all this to you people. City engineer, Tim Lodge. We wouldn't necessarily need to have standards that are wide lane widths, wide shoulders. So we could right-size the city standards as more regional transit or trunk route type standards. City leaders have long worried about safety risks on Peninsula Drive M37. It transitions from downtown to Old Mission, particularly near the intersection of Bryant Park. City Beach popular with families, pedestrians, and cyclists. I think the intersection, the width of the intersection, the speed of the cars coming off that, which is currently M37, and making the wide turn is dangerous, said one of our former commissioners. Especially people trying to cross to that park, because I've done it many times. Mayor Jim Crothers agreed, saying he wanted the city to look into pedestrian opportunities because it's a very high volume. Remember this back in 2020. Lodge concurred, widely noting that there is a wonderful crosswalk there to nowhere in the corridor. That is a very poor walking and biking environment. The city could explore narrowing the intersection at Bryant Park as well as improving connection between surrounding neighborhoods. I don't need to go into that part. There's a lot of even the TAR trail that's projected in the future. It starts at the senior center and goes west. Doesn't come east. We got some brand new sidewalks. It looks really great. Come off of Front Street, going up Peninsula, brand new sidewalks. Stop at Anderson Road. What? I mean, that's got to be embarrassing. Not only is it dangerous, it's got to be embarrassing. Got this big public park, one of the popular parks in Traverse City, and we can't get to it. It's very dangerous to get to. We all know that. And even the TAR trail that they're planned will not, it will stay on the west side of M37 until it gets to Eastern Avenue. So there's still no help in getting across if we wait for that TAR trail. So there was money allocated for it. There was concerns. Peninsula Township was proactive and made some stinks, and I'm going to read some of it because to me it's not very valid. November 19, 2019, Peninsula Township Board adopted a resolution requesting MDOT to withdraw its offer to transfer jurisdiction of M37 to the County Road Commission. It didn't get withdrawn until 2 years later almost. So it wasn't a bad idea. It wasn't someone, oh man, that wasn't a good idea. In fact, it's even a better idea now because, as you said, our population is growing. The people out there, the traffic is just increasing. So, in the complaints that Peninsula Township has, first one, M37 of Peninsula Township is a pure Michigan scenic byway. Act 69 of 1993, Section 6. After a 30-day comment period, opportunity for a public hearing, department makes a decision, deleting or changing to pure Michigan byway system. And again, according to the Record Eagle newspaper report, Road Commission meeting of August 20, 2019, saying that M37 of Peninsula is a dead-end state highway. It was put in because it used to be a state park. No, it was put in because it used to be an active lighthouse. Even trying to fudge it, Peninsula Township was trying to fudge why it's there. It was put in because if there wasn't for that lighthouse, there would have never been a state road, a state highway. The only person has been Heather that's even acknowledged anything about this with me. And she got in contact with MDOT, and I'd already been in contact with them before that. They're willing to put in a crosswalk. But unfortunately, we've got to have sidewalks on both sides to do that. Why don't we have sidewalks there? I'm paying city taxes. I don't have a sidewalk. And they only have to come up 4 more houses to get to Peninsula Court, which is where the crossing most naturally should be. There's an opening to the park on the other side. I don't know why the TAR trail doesn't go on up Peninsula Court. To take it all the way down to Eastern, we got telephone poles, we got so many things that would have to be moved. It's so narrow that there's really only two options. We open up, get this thing going back, trying to get local control, get the meeting that was originally supposed to be held, never happened. You can say it was because of the pandemic or whatever, doesn't matter. We're back in that same, an even worse situation. We can't cross the road there safely, and it's just getting worse. So we either gotta put some sidewalks in, so we can put a crosswalk there, the state will put one in. Or we work with the township, get the meetings, and see how we can come up with something that works for everybody, so we can have local control. Peninsula Township's not a different country. It's like, I remember during the pandemic, people say, let's cut off so the people of Traverse City can't go up to Peninsula and spread the, virus. Yeah, I mean, we shut them off. I know I'm getting a little facetious, but Peninsula Township's value comes from Traverse City. I mean, I don't want to be Red Center City, but if it was Kalkaska, they were 30 miles, 20 miles from, it wouldn't be the same. So for them to be controlling the situation by not willing to meet and come up with some solution where we can have some local control. You can either leave it the same, which is not a viable decision because it's just going to keep getting worse and worse. I'm not going to sue now, but I'm going to have a lot of information. I've wrote a lot of letters to people and other people here that we could have done something, we should have done something, and we should do something about it now. Peninsula Township, emphatically, whatever it said, where's, I don't even know where you people stand on this. The people don't know where you stand at. You shook your head. Amy, you used to answer my emails promptly before you became mayor or whatever you are now. Now it's like, you know what you said to me first time? I'll look into it. I haven't heard squawk from you since then. It's like, you people don't care about some of us in the city? That's what it seems like. Because we don't seem to be getting the same treatment as everybody else. Got all these new sidewalks, all this, it's like, but we got something going to nowhere there. I don't know, anybody want to add anything to this? It's just, I don't even know why I even have to do this anymore. We should be on the same page that we need to do something about it. We need to form any committees. The only choices are put the sidewalks in, so that the state will put in a crosswalk, or we negotiate with everybody like it originally was supposed to be and see if we can come up with something. It's pathetic. I would like something that us taxpayers, something from you that acknowledges that you think it's a problem or you want to deal with it. I don't know, it's like, I feel like I'm banging my head against it. It's like gone on for years. I started 2012, I wrote my first letter to Record Eagle about this situation. And it's only gotten, so many more wineries out there, and I don't know. I feel, as I said, taxation without representation, because we're not getting the same representation in that part of the city as everybody else has. Well, I thank you for your time. You have a very hard job, I know that. And I just hope this moves up on what's important to you people. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to address really quickly, first of all, I apologize if I missed any emails, but we did have discussions in 2022 when the state pulled the transfer of MDOT. And so we did just want to reiterate that the state pulled that offer of giving it back to local control. So that is still the state highway. And to your point, sir, we'd have to join with Peninsula and get them on board as well, because we alone can't take over that. They won't turn over that small portion to us. So we've had that conversation in a public meeting before. It's been a couple of years, so that's a fair point to bring it up and to.
It would never move forward if one party is against it. So they came up right away, we're against it. But the meeting never got held. It's so valid to have the meeting, set up the thing between everybody.
That would be with us and MDOT, so we can look into that, I guess, but I think they've turned us down, and Peninsula's turned us down a couple of times about that, so just wanted to clarify that, Commissioner Stanley.
Is it, however, within our purview to extend the sidewalks along Peninsula Drive to create the connection necessary for MDOT to put in the crosswalk?
I think that's part of the TART Trail conversation. That's going to be my next point that we've been having, and the sidewalk conversation that goes with that. So whether it's part of the TART Trail or a sidewalk that we do, that would be the conversation we'll have going forward. So there are two separate conversations. The sidewalk portion we do have control over, and we are looking at that area right now. The complete takeover the Michigan Highway is a conversation that has stalled a few times over since 2022, but I appreciate you bringing that up to us in this public comment.
Amy?
Yes.
In my conversation with MDOT, they were also very open to running the TART Trail up Peninsula Court, as Mr. Swiston mentioned, because there's an opening. It's a cul-de-sac, but it is open to Milliken on the other side, so bikes and people can pass through. It's much safer to ride your bike or walk up Peninsula Court than to go all the way down to Eastern and then, all the way down to Eastern and up that way. Much safer.
Yes.
However, there's really no room for sidewalks on Peninsula Court, so it's another problem. It's a really tough problem, but he absolutely has a point. It is, I have to drive to go to Bryan Park. I didn't used to 20 years ago when I bought my house, but I have to drive now because there's no other way to get there.
No, I appreciate that, and I think that, to your point, that's where we
And
have
I
the
live 2
conversations,
blocks away.
the potential for conversations there versus the entire takeover that is within our purview to work on and have those conversations, so.
Well, I just, thank you, sir. You've had your opportunity for public comment. It's now back to the commission.
15 minutes, Rob?
You sat down, and that's how that rolls, so we've.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, so thank you for the presentation, and I know you've brought up pieces of it before, so thank you for the whole presentation and setting the time aside, because I think that helps us to know where we can help reach out to you and address some of those specific things about the sidewalks and the trail more accurately.
Okay, sir, you're starting to get disruptive. This is a city commission meeting. Your time for public comment has elapsed, and no, that's it. That's it, no.
I'm yield to our parliamentarian on this,
No, no.
so. Thank you for your time, and we will continue that conversation and be able to talk more about the trails and the sidewalks as we go forward, but it is yours. Often our projects are yours. But as far as the MDOT, it can be periodically brought up again, but that was something pulled by the state, so we don't have that forced by them which was pushing the conversation initially. So thank you for that reserved public comment. At this time, we have general public comment. If anybody wants to talk about anything, please feel free.
Jim Crothers, 218 West 11th Street. Since Mr. Swiston did bring me up, and I was mayor at the time, and as someone that drives on that road almost every day in the summertime, we did have a plan to change Peninsula Drive. We did try to work with MDOT, Grand Traverse County Road Commission, Peninsula Township to take over that portion of the road. We wanted to narrow the lanes, we wanted to put curb and gutter, we wanted to put sidewalks, and we wanted to put crosswalks. But in the meantime, I think with the Walkable Communities Grant, we did a lot with bump outs. We painted bump outs at where you turn on the Peninsula Drive off of where Garfield is. We put cones and those little flag things in the road. We calmed it a little bit. But I will agree with him, and especially this summer, traffic backs up past Eastern pretty much daily because of the construction that we're doing, and that just happens because of construction. But I don't think we should stop talking about that. Marty Coburn and I and Tim Lodge talked about that for hours about what we can do. But I still think it would be nice to get that section of road, because I believe MDOT originally offered money with it. If we were able to take over our section, some money came with it. But I think it was more of a fight with Peninsula Township and the Road Commission over other issues out on the peninsula that sort of stalled that partnership. But there's a lot going on there. I mean, we have pedestrian cross lights at Eastern and at Peninsula Drive, but there's no sidewalks and there's no crosswalks. And we've had those for decades. They're so old, they're full of spider webs and such. But this gentleman has a point, and with the growth on the peninsula, with the wineries expansions, with all the subdivisions being built down there, the traffic on Peninsula Drive is getting much worse. I mean, Ann Rogers has spoke to us for multiple meetings about it. She lives on Peninsula Drive right there. So I do think we need to do something about calming the traffic. And I mean, as a part-time Peninsula Township resident, be damned the Peninsula, I can drive slow when I go through there, and I can drive in a line of traffic. So I totally support efforts to calm Peninsula Drive, because it is a premier beach for Cherry Festival, for air show, for fireworks. We have our major high school within walking distance of that beach. People park at the high school to walk over to that beach. So I think it's a major spot for Traverse City. So thank you for bringing this up, and let's keep, and I think you agree, that let's keep this discussion going and see what we can do to calm it a little bit and make it safer for pedestrians. Because we are in our tourist season when lots of people want to be at the beach, and it sounds like we're going to have some hot weather for a few days, so people are going across safely there. So I'm on board with that, so thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Justin Reed, city resident. Talking about unsafe intersections, Garfield and the Chart Trail along the railroad tracks right there. That is a very dangerous intersection for bicyclists to cross. That could be something else being talked about, because without any kind of pedestrian signal right there, you have to stop and you have to wait, and a lot of times traffic just buzzes right through there. So that's a dangerous intersection. So we can talk about that. And Woodmere, Woodmere, luckily they have they've got the flashers right there for the Chart Trail. That's worked out wonderful. So, maybe we need to talk about that too. I mean, there's unsafe intersections with the Chart Trail pretty much a lot, but that's a discussion that we can have for any kind of master plans for the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Any other public comment about anything? Okay, seeing none, I will bring it back. Any final comments from the commissioners? Okay, seeing none, we will adjourn, we won't adjourn the meeting. We'll go into our closed sessions. We will come back to adjourn the meeting. We do not have any we do not have any action we will be taking. So we will just come back to adjourn the meeting when we are done with our reviews. Thank you. Oh, and sorry, to anybody who needs signatures, come up, please. Sorry. Yep. You didn't do too bad. We had like a 3-hour one the other day, so you got a little longer than the hour and a half, guys, so. All right. Close. Where's one more? We need one more of the stragglers here. Finn's our winner. All right. With a quorum of the city commission here, I adjourn the meeting.
All right, see you later.
Thanks, Heather.
Good night.
Good night.
Yeah, we're so spoiled, 10:15 feels super late.
I know. Well, and also for the night of the reviews, I remembered a few nights.